So I want to breeze through Egypt and Turkey. Okay, that's going to be like a quick breeze, and then I want to spend the bulk of the time in Ladakh. And I want to make this interactive, which means it's not me just going blah, 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 blah. I never go blah, 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 blah. Okay, but you get the idea. But really spending time with you asking questions or making comments, etc., and then me doing more blah, blah, blah. However, I'm going to be moving from country to country fairly quickly until we get to Ladakh, because I'm trying to crowd 5 or 6 of them in, and so I'm going to try to remember, if you have questions or comments, to repeat the question, because I want to get it on camera, and I don't have anyone running camera unless somebody feels like running camera, which means I didn't see any hands go up. Okay. So the 10 minutes in Egypt. I went there very specifically to see the pyramids. I wound up seeing a lot of street demonstrations along with the pyramids, and the idea behind the pyramids was to actually look at. We've seen them, they're you can't, like, they're etched into our consciousness. They've been there forever, okay? But as many times as you've seen it, as many times as you looked at the dollar bill, it's something. It's very, very different when you actually see it, when you're actually in the presence. My first view was, my luggage came late, so I had to actually buy some clothes to wear. And I was walking out of the store where I was buying the clothes. I just looked up, and it's like, ta-da! And it was shocking. I mean, it just brought tears to my eyes. I mean, it just really had a visceral, deep effect on me. On Sharon, you going to join us? Or yeah. Hi. Hi. This is Sharon. This is her house, along with his house, along with my house.
I never know if it's
Yeah.
If I join you, it will be.
Okay. Okay. So it was interesting. It was interesting looking at my how I was so deeply affected by it. This is okay. This is me sitting down in a friend's house, eating camel's liver. Yes, I made a friend in Egypt, and they were, oh, please come to my house and meet my meet my family. Why is this going so slow? And for the special honored guest, we're going to make calf's liver. It's like, gee, huh?
Camel.
Camel, yeah, and yeah, there is a difference. The only way I could describe it is that it tastes really, really big.
Big.
Yeah, it's like that. So, this is no, and there was a lot too. It's like, oh, you're the really special guest here. So, we had a few kilos of camel's liver to get through. This is pyramids at night from a balcony, and again, there's just this exquisite, almost emotional feel to it. The one thing I'd like to show you, I can't find it on my computer. I know I've got it, but I've got an image of the casing stones for the pyramid, and that was worth the entire trip. The fact of looking at these blocks, these huge blocks, that you can't even see where the seam is. You can see a crack, but somebody could have just drawn it on with a pencil. They fit that close together after somewhere between 4,000 and 12,000 years. But yeah, I spent all my time outside because everybody wants to go into the king's chamber, and they don't want to see that these stones are not just tossed up there. And I've got some great video of this that I can't find, that shows how they were. It's like each one was cut and for a particular place and a particular purpose. It's not, oh, we got some slaves dragging bricks up, I'll put it over there. It's like, no, they're really, some of them were two rows high, some of them were 1 row high. The entrance stones were amazingly huge, and were stress relievers. So yeah, that was really something. And it was really something to see the modern city and the ancient pyramids in the background. And there's a reason for that. But any questions about Egypt? Because we're about to leave.
What's on the tip top of the pyramid?
So you saw that little thing. It's just a piece of metal to show where the height of the pyramid would have been if they hadn't taken off the capstone and stripped off the outside covering. So it's just a piece of metal that shows you where the height of the pyramid would have been.
Why did they take off the capstone?
There's a million different reasons, a million different theories around that. One theory said the capstone was made out of, was 8 feet tall and made out of pure diamond. Another theory said that it levitated itself off. Another theory said, anybody can guess. And I felt like a lot of folks were guessing. Okay, they don't really know. If you say a guess very authoritatively, okay, and you then put it on YouTube, then it becomes a fact. And so my next stop was to correlate the pyramid with another site. But before that, I'm going to ask you a question. And the question is, and it's about unlearning what we think we know. What do you know about the bubonic plague?
Killed off a third of the population, something like that. Fleas, rats,
Okay.
and 3 seeds,
a-
oil,
a-
ugly oil thing.
Yeah. And a third of the population of Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. What you know is the same thing I was taught. Okay, and you were taught to look at a map that looks like that. It shows you where the plague, the highest density of the plague. There are some places that in Europe that had no plague at all. Okay, and this map is misleading. It's wrong. It's actually wrong. And the reason that it's wrong is that the plague map looks like that. Okay? But the people who taught us, the fact that millions, tens of millions of people were dying in Asia is an irrelevancy. The fact that Europe was involved and the fact that Europe had 30% of its population decimated, that's the story. Okay? And so when we think about what we know, we have to look at it through a lens. And that lens is the lens of a Europe-dominated story. The story is wrong. Okay? So now the question is, what other parts of the story are wrong? Okay? Now, the story that we got says that we started somewhere in Africa, went into caves, were eating dinosaurs. I don't know. Okay, you know, and we made this progression between getting fire, hunter-gatherers, somewhere around 8,000 years ago, developed sedentary agriculture, allowed us to do certain kinds of things like move into cities. And then the pyramids were built 4,000 years ago, and then we developed iPads, and here we are. So that history is an unbroken line of progression from running around, basically as savages and getting here. And that's wrong. And what's wrong about that is Göbekli Tepe. Okay, the pyramid has never been carbon dated. And so the people who believe that pharaohs built the pyramids have this huge story. And the entire Egyptian consciousness is based on this story that Khufu, that Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid. Göbekli Tepe is in central Turkey, and this site has these 20-foot tall granite monoliths. They weigh up to 20 tons. They are moved from miles away, and it's been carbon dated as 12,000 years ago, before sedentary agriculture. This is the Neolithic pyramid, where they say that the most technologically advanced item that a human being had was a spear, okay? And that they're saying that they did this, okay? Hunter-gatherers cut very intricately carved and moved a 20-ton piece of granite by picking it up and cutting it with spears. And this site, and if you notice these are just not cut. They're intricately carved. These are interesting carvings here. And I got these images from National Geographic because I was sick. I could when they're driving me back to the airport, I could wave at the site, but I couldn't stop. I was not doing well. So the question is, did people with spears carve these stones? Okay. Oh, by the way, carve them and sit them up straight, and they've been standing straight for 12,000 years. Okay. So did Neolithic people stop running after antelope or whatever they were doing and say, oh, let's do this intricate site over 80 acres and massive standing stones, and then go back and get another antelope? We are searching for the rest of the story. Okay. I'm switching you to the end of the story only because I want to save the time for Ladakh. So I want to talk about Bali for a bit. Anything else about Turkey, standing stones, sick?
What kind of sick?
Real.
Yeah, real. For years now, I've gotten my diagnoses for my illnesses from Dr. Google. You put your symptoms in, push the button, and you'll get not only what the malady is, but also the treatment. I couldn't access the internet in Sanliurfa, Turkey. Couldn't find anybody who spoke English. And the internet was 4 floors down. All I had to do was get the password. This hotel didn't have telephones in the rooms. And for 3 days, I'm trying to muster the strength to get down and ask for the password. Okay. I finally got that, and I was so dizzy. As soon as I stand up, I could stand up, walk straight to the bathroom, and start throwing up. I managed to get downstairs, asked for the password, punched in my symptoms, dizzy, vomiting, et cetera, and came back with acute dehydration. I'd spent so much time in Egypt, I thought I was drinking enough water. And Dr. Google said, you were not drinking enough water. And so then I typed in, I am severely dehydrated, I need, you know what rehydration salts are? Okay, so I needed rehydration salts. Can you get them for me? Pushed the Google Translate button and handed it to the guy at the desk, who freaked out. Like, you speak Turkish now. And 5 minutes later, I had my rehydration salts, and about an hour later, I was feeling much better, and the next day I flew out. And that was my stay in Turkey. But the scary thing about that was how dependent I was on Google. You know, I mean, I don't like thinking about that level of dependency. Any other questions on Turkey? Okay.
So those things have been standing for 12,000 years.
Yes.
Amidst earthquakes, and I mean, Turkey is not free from earthquakes.
Yes and no. They've been standing all this time, but somewhere around 8,000 years ago, they were buried. They were purposely buried. They buried this huge, I mean, people with shovels came and, I don't know whether it was to hide.
From spears to shovels?
Yeah, right, yeah, right. Well, 8,000 years, they're modern people by then, yeah, shovels, right, yeah, right, exactly. So the site was purposely buried and wasn't discovered again until like the 1970s. And they're still just scooping it out. They said they haven't come across, they haven't exposed the entire 80-acre site yet. Yeah.
Sure, perhaps food for another time,
Mhm.
but I don't, you know, years and amount of time,
Right.
stick in my mind, but I'm thinking in terms of, especially what was on about, the one in England.
Stonehenge, yeah.
Same thing, hunter-gatherer,
Right.
sturdy, and I think it was probably very Roman, just like,
Yeah.
maybe there's some sort of bigger
Right.
thing going on way
Yeah.
back then.
So I'm in way back when mode. Okay, something, we don't know what, but something was happening way back when. This site is twice the age of Stonehenge. And one of the things we'll be getting into this next week, but one of the things that I find tantalizing is in almost all of these sites, the older the site is, the better it is, okay? The oldest of the Great Pyramids is the one that is the most fantastic of them. It's biggest, it's the most ornate, it's the most intricate, etc. And then they seem to have lost the thread of it. These carvings, I mean, if you've anybody been to Stonehenge?
It's the one up the river.
Okay, right. Well, there's a different river over there. But when you look at Stonehenge, you have to keep reminding yourself that, oh, these are Neolithic people, these are, you know. But the stones are rough. You know, it's not nearly as intricate as this is. So, okay, and then I'm going to push the magic button and move us on, because we got a lot of ground to cover. So, one thing I found in both Bali and in Ladakh, I was on the trail of an ancient civilization called Zhangzong. And this was in Central Asia, and it comprised what is now Mongolia, Tibet, and Ladakh. Zhangzong went back 18,000 years, And so the people in that region will say clearly, you know, our civilization started 18,000 years ago. They don't um, um, they don't have um, physical proof of that. So anthropologists dismiss it. Now, why do they dismiss it? Because we have this story, and the story says we started off as cavemen, and we get to the iPods, and so having a civilization in the middle that has all sorts of powers, powers that we don't have, like moving objects with their minds, moving time, and we're going to get to those all those in a minute. They dismiss all of it as though it were folk tales. Okay, anything that can't be done by Western ancestors is simply not considered to be any part of reality. So, but in Ladakh and in Bali, you've got what I call these paired cultures.
Where's the dog?
Ladakh is northern India, northern Pakistan,
Okay,
southern
yeah,
China.
yeah.
Okay. And the people, first of all, look alike. Although the cultures, Bali has a theoretically Hindu culture. Ladakh has a theoretically Buddhist culture. But when you scratch both of them, you find there's something else underneath both of them. And the something else is this Zangzong culture. And I'll say more about that when I get to the Oracle of Cebu. Okay. So actually, when I was listening to Ladakhis speak, they have a very interesting rhythm to their speech, and the rhythm sounds like if you've heard Native Americans talk to each other. It's dum dum dum, very abrupt, dum dum dum. And then the response comes in almost before the end of this person's talk. So, bum 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 bum, dum 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 bum bum bum. Okay, so it's almost like a mirrored talking. So I'm listening to this, listening to a lot of this in Ladakh, and when I get to Bali, I hear the same thing. And I was telling one of my Balinese friends, and I said, this is the way they talk. He said, yeah, we talk the same way. So there's something happening with these paired cultures. Now, one of the things is they're paired. In my mind, they're paired, but they're very different in that different religious backgrounds. Bali has this lush reality, and so the images I'll show you of Ladakh, it is not lush. It is amazingly stark. And Bali has a permanent 12-month growing season. Ladakh has a 3-month growing season, and all you can grow is barley. Nothing else grows that high. And so it makes life interesting. The Balinese had a lot of tourists coming in, and they had a way of dealing with the tourists, the negative energy that tourists bring to any situation. Negative energy I was bringing, and I didn't want to bring the negative energy, but I'm wrapped in it, okay? And what the Balinese high priests would do is take the negative energy of the tourists and send it into the dogs. And if you ever saw a Balinese dog, you would, this is not a happy puppy. I mean, they would howl all night long as though they were in pain. They had sores on them. They were a wreck. And when I asked one of these guys, I mean, I don't even like dogs, and I felt sorry for the dogs. And he said, it's either the dogs or our children. and one of the two of them are going to absorb the negativity that we bring. Thanks to Julia Roberts, I think that they lost the battle. Her movie, yeah, the place is swimming in tourists now who have no idea where they are, who have no idea. All they want to do is see the things they saw in the movies.
I never saw it.
Okay, right.
I just knew
Okay,
it.
right. Thank you. I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really from the book. It was
Mhm.
written by Elizabeth, and I can't think of the last name,
Right. Mhm.
And all these, I mean, men never read the book.
Right.
So all the women in this country that watched Oprah
Yep.
and read this book,
Mhm.
that's what did, because we all, read this wonderful eating time in Italy, the wonderful prayer time in
Gilbert.
India. Gilbert, thank
I
you.
read the book.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Woo! And then
Do the rest of the women of America know this?
and then she created this vision of Bali where she fell in love, and it was paradise. So of course, all the women in the world wanted to go.
Yeah, and so they're walking around lost. You
They're
know.
looking for love.
Yeah, look
Yeah,
at me. And overwhelming a culture while they're doing it. I mean, it's like I could spend a lot more time with that, but I won't right now. And actually, Ladakh is losing the battle with tourists also. What we call progress is decimating their society. One of my most wonderful experiences, and I have pictures of it, but I wasn't able to find them. A guy who was driving me in Ladakh invited me to a temple ceremony, and this is a ceremony that's not done for tourists. I was one of maybe 3 Westerners that was there, and this was the activity that the villagers do for themselves. And afterwards, we went to his compound, and we were sitting in his open room. They have several houses in the compound, and then there's this one open area with a roof on it. And it was raining, so we're just kind of listening to the rain, and we're talking, and his wife was bringing us fruits and candies and stuff like that. And at one point in time, his son, who's like 12 years old, is sitting behind him, and he points behind him and he says, at one point he's going to live in this house, the house that the family is living in now. Then he says, I am going to live in this house, the house where his father is living. And his father can't understand a word of English, but every time we point to him, he smiles and waves. And he said, then my father will be dead, and then when he dies, his body will be placed right here in the open area, and then we'll cremate him. And so I'm looking from Landon to his son to the father, and I said, how old is this compound? And he thinks for a second. He says, we have no idea. He said, and he points to his father. He says, he has no idea. He says, this was in our family before records were kept. And just think of what that does to a young person, knowing where you fit in the world. Now, the son doesn't have to live in the compound. He might go out to the university, he might get a job or whatever, but he'll probably wind up drifting back to the compound because that's been home base for thousands of years. And so the people that I interacted with were people who were connected to each other, connected to a piece of land, and connected to into both their past and their future. And one reason why we feel lost and adrift, etc., is that we don't have we actually say that those connections are not important. And I think that they are deeply and vastly important. Okay, so we're done. Well, no, wait a minute. Oh, so so I was seeing this global civilization of Zhangzong in Ladakh, in other parts of India, in Bali, then when I went to the Maoris, so it's all over the place. You're looking twitchy.
Me?
Oh yeah, Doug, you want to say something?
No.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay.
I'm just listening.
I'm paying attention. Okay. Okay, so Ladakh. So Zhangzong was Mongolia, Tibet, and Ladakh. But I went to Ladakh, not to Mongolia and not to Tibet, for a couple of reasons. One is that the Himalayas were there. And the other reason was I have friends that I had only met through the internet there, and they've been saying for 3 years, you got to come to Ladakh, you got to come to Ladakh, and I kept looking and saying, I look at pictures and say, I don't think so. It looks like a lot of rocks to me, and I can see rocks anywhere. And then I read the Peter Kingsley book, and I realized why they were calling me to Ladakh. So someone who was a friend and a co-worker in Sri Lanka was ordained in Ladakh. And he was saying, you got to come to Ladakh. And then he introduced me to a young woman who kept saying, she was the English translator for the Mahabodhi Guest House and Meditation Center. And she kept saying, you got to come to Ladakh and you have to meet my mother. Okay, so I said, okay, I'll come to Ladakh. I didn't know what meeting her mother meant, and I found out, and I'll tell you in a minute. I'm not going to, I was going to load some pictures here. Beautiful pictures of the Hemis Monastery.
You like pictures, you can go to look at.
Okay, right. Well, I didn't load any here because let's just say my experience of the monastery was ruined by tourists. Tourists, there's a difference between a traveler and a tourist. And a traveler wants to experience where they have traveled to, and a tourist wants to take a picture of exactly what they've seen in the guidebook. Okay, and so you had a bunch of people in there going snap, 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 and completely ignoring this amazing culture that's all around them. I won't say any more. So here's a map of the world, and this is the Buckminster Fuller projection. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but it shows the connections between the land masses. So to orient you, this is the United States on its side, and Canada here, and Mexico here. So this is Central Asia, and this Central Asian Zhangzong culture went south into India, went west into Greece, and this is what the Peter Kingsley book was showing, went north into Mongolia and northern Russia, and actually across the northern part of that world. South and east through Beijing into the Pacific, and we start calling them Polynesians at this point. Same people, and they wound up down in New Zealand, where they're called the Maoris. Across the Siberia, at the time that they did this, there was a land bridge here, and came into North and South America and became what we call Native Americans. So this constitutes the world's first global civilization. This happened somewhere 20,000 18,000, 13,000 years ago. I just had a great meeting with Matthew Fox. He was in town, and he was saying, well, Cherie, I was telling him all this. He says, oh, number one, he knows all this. He's Matthew Fox. And he said, well, you know that Pythagoras spent like a dozen years in Africa, in Egypt and other places in Africa. And I said, I didn't know that. And so now there's an African connection going in this direction. So the only place that Zhang Zong didn't reach, as far as I know, is Antarctica. Okay, so what we're living in right now is the second global civilization. This one is unstable, untenable, unsustainable, and something will replace it. And maybe that not going and living in yurts or anything like that, but maybe the value structure of Zhang Zong will be what we will be living in. Okay, so this entire area is Buddhist. I was there for over 30 days, and I was after a while I was trying to find a house, a building, or a car that didn't have a picture of the Dalai Lama in it. Okay, and I was not able to do so. Every time I said, "Oh wait, this is the Dalai Lama free zone," it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't turn around and see the big one on the wall here." But before the Dalai Lama, before Buddhism, there was a religion called Bon. Bon says it goes back 18,000 years. And Bon is a deeply shamanic tradition. When Buddhism came, it actually took over Bon. So when you look at Tibetan Buddhism, it's very, very different from any other kind of Buddhism. And everything that you see about Tibetan Buddhism that's different was there because of Bon. B-O-N. And it's not pronounced, it's pronounced I can't do it. Bun. It's not really bun, it's bun. Yeah. So this is me meeting with a Bon priest, but unfortunately he didn't know as much about Bon as I did. So he wasn't helpful in terms of tracking things down, but he's a good guy, and gave me a great tour of the Bon temple there. There's a history where the Buddhists literally wiped out the Bon practitioners. I mean, they killed them. They took their secrets, and then they killed the high priest, etc. That was done by the bloodthirsty third Dalai Lama. This one, the 14th, has really mellowed. It took him a while, but he's really trying to reconcile Buddhism and Bon, and has said some very favorable things about Bon recently. Okay, so the three values of Zhang Zong, we're going to talk much more about this next week. So these are the things that you see in any culture that's been influenced by Zhang Zong. Relationship and reverence to the earth, relationship and reference to all beings. That includes but is not exclusive to human beings. They don't see humans as being the top of anything. And relationship to and working with transcendence, with a transsensory reality. We'll talk more about that in a bit. So I spent most of my time and my home base. Okay, so Ladakh is high. The plane lands at 13,000 feet, and you go up from there. And so the city of Leh is about 13,000 feet. and people were getting off the plane and passing out.
This is after your dehydration experience?
Oh yes, oh yes. Yeah, actually, I remained vertical in the airport. I really gave myself a lot of credit for that. I had to lean once in a while, but yeah, I remained vertical. The people just kind of bustled out the out the bus, and they were waiting for the luggage, and they're talking. And, so and so breathing was difficult. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how it feels, and especially since I grew up with asthma, and so this threw me way back in my time tunnel. And I'm just sitting there, I'm not moving. It feels like I just finished running, 5 blocks all the time, So I stayed at the Mahabodhi guest house, and I was on the 2nd floor. And so the first week, I'd get to the first landing, then go up to the 2nd landing, and then get to my room. Sleeping was difficult for the first, I'd say, week or so. 3 or 4 times a night, I would wake up without breath, if you have any idea what that feels like, and then can't get back to sleep because you know it's going to happen again, So it took me like maybe 10 days before I could sleep through the night. The Mahabodhi guest house, I'll say more about this later. That one's supposed to move, I think. Oh, it's not. It's a picture. This whole area, again, this is stark beauty. I was just thrown by, number one, how beautiful it is, and by number two, there's just nothing growing there that is not being irrigated. It's all, if you see it, it's being watered. Okay. Early on in my experience, I knew that I was going to spend time in a cave, and I put the word out that I wanted to spend time in a cave. And the Mahabodhi folks said, well, we've got caves. I don't know if you can see them. I got a closer picture here. But this is, I'm taking this picture from the guest house. And you walk a little bit up the hill, and they've got these little meditation cells. And you can see them better in this picture with this giant painting of Milarepa. And that wasn't what I was looking for. They said, we'll bring your food to you, and, this is like, are they air conditioned? It's like it's. I was looking for a cavier experience. Okay, so I think I found it. This is a nunnery, and this is not part of Mahabodhi. Mahabodhi had its own nunnery, but this nunnery had its own cave, and so and they were very friendly. This is
The women?
yes. This is the head nun, and just to give you a sense of perspective, they're all fairly short. And I don't know if I've got